Long live the newlywed! Congratulations, Lola!
What's wrong?
I must inform you, you'll never be able to bear children.
It's been 6 months already. You look like a ghost. Look at you.
Why don't we go back to our town?
No, that's out of the question. I had a wonderful childhood in this house, and our children will be happy here too.
Here we provide shelter and education to abandoned children. Tina, come here, please. They were abandoned at the gates of the convent. They are unique, special children.
Lola, no, I know what you're thinking, and they're just too old and a bit strange.
Hello. These children need to be loved. Same as us, we need love. Let us be a family.
I want you to close your eyes.
1, 2...
And 3! Be gone, Satan!
Children, is this another game?
Teen and Tina are two beings mischievous like all children.
What if they're not simply innocent children who misinterpret the Bible? What if they're just the opposite? You can't just do whatever the Bible says you should.
It's the word of God.
The Bible is fantasy.
Honey, that's not jam.
Cookie's not waking up.
You mustn't lie to me. Lying is a sin.
A mother should trust her children.
That is the wrath of God.
But you have to promise that no matter what happens, you won't get up from your chair. Do you promise?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike, and joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom? How's it going?
Greetings and salutations, adoptive parents. Mike, tell me something. Do you ever remember a month of May since we've been podcasting that's had this many motherhood horror films? This isn't fucking insane.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I can't think of it because out of the past month, like 3 of the 4 weeks, and now
exactly
going into June.
3 out of the 4 weeks of May, because technically this is still our last May episode, even though it's going to be a little late because of the holiday on Monday. You know, the 3 of us had better stuff to do. So, but you know, technically, yeah, 3 of the 4 episodes in May are motherhood horror, and that's kind of surprising.
Makes you wonder if there was like all these pandemic pregnancies, and now we're getting the result of those in like movies and TV shows about like the anxieties and all that stuff around it. But yeah. All right. Also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
Okay. Yeah. So this week we are covering a movie on Netflix, and it's called Tin and Tina. And I believe it's Spanish, right? Is it straight up Spain?
3 or 4 different.
From Spain.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 other countries, but I think Spain is probably the predominant one.
Yeah, definitely Spanish language. And it says countries of origin: Spain, United States, Romania. So
that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, could have to do with it lists a bunch of about 4 different filming locations, so that's probably why there. And let's see, our synopsis, after I scroll back up. After a tragic abort, I'm assuming that's supposed to be abortion, but Lola and her husband Adolfo adopt Tin and Tina, 2 lovely brother and sister with an ultra-Catholic education that makes them interpret the Holy Bible verbatim. Yeah, someone didn't check the grammar on this.
Abort? That wasn't an abort.
Yeah,
that was
synopsis, and I did not pre-read it before reading it. That's why I kind of got caught up 3 times trying to read it. But yeah, so Tin and Tina, it's on Netflix right now, so you could always pause the show and go watch it or stick around either way. But let's get into our general thoughts on Tin and Tina. Venom, per usual, I'll kick it to you. What did you think?
This movie is fucking long. This movie is exactly 2 hours long, and it feels like it's 3 hours long. I mean, there are some major pacing issues. Now, I understand that the director, filmmaker, is going for, tension and, sustained tension and things like that. But I don't know. I found this movie to be, and I hate to say it because it is a beautiful film. It's beautifully made, great filmmaking, good performances from our four main actors. Like no major problems with it as far as that goes, as far as filmmaking. But once again, it's the same old story. It's storytelling that just kind of, I lose my interest in this movie really fast. Like the movie just feels so derivative and just we're expecting so many things to happen that don't end up happening, which might be refreshing to some people, understandably. But if you're going to call this a horror film, give me some horror. It's like I'm waiting for 2 hours for something visceral to happen. And, we get somebody set on fire. I guess that's pretty cool. And they're not even really set on fire, as we'll talk about in the spoiler section. But yeah, this movie, again, another motherhood story, which, I'm starting to think that maybe I'm not the biggest fan of this subgenre of horror, because now this is the third one in a row that I've just felt really lackluster about. I'm not going to say the movie is bad. I'm just going to say it's long. It's kind of dull at times. And I don't know, like you feel the one thing I'll give the movie is that the ending is not what you expect. But having said that, I hated the ending. I fucking hated the ending. So, it's going to be really hard for me to recommend this movie. You guys all know I'm Spanish. I love my Spanish horror. This movie is, of course, in Spanish. It's set in Spain in 1981. It's kids getting adopted, and, obviously there's something wrong with the kids. So it's like, it seems like something that would be right up my alley, but as I'm watching it, it's just so slow and so plodding, and you just want it to get somewhere. Just get somewhere, please. I beg you. Literally, with a half hour left in the movie, I'm begging out loud by myself in my living room, please just end. This is, I don't want to say it was torturous necessarily, because as I've already said, it's not a bad film. It's just once I lose interest in a film, every movie feels like it's 2+ hours. And unfortunately, I just kind of lost interest really early with this one. Once one particular event happens in the film, which again, we'll talk about in the spoilers section, I start to lose interest. Once again, we get that wonderful horror trope that I can't fucking stand, the skeptical spouse doesn't believe the wife when she tells him that there's something wrong with the kids, doesn't believe her when she says, they did that thing on purpose, that there was no misunderstanding, there was no biblical misunderstanding, blah blah blah. So yeah, just another skeptical spouse, which just pisses the piss out of me off. I'm sorry, I can't even put English words together. I'm so upset right now. Ultimately, this is a fine movie, and a lot of people are going to find this enjoyable. Like I said, it's got some good tension, really good performances. The score is fine. It's acceptable. Some decent editing. I will say the cinematography does shine in a lot of parts of this film. There's one shot in particular that I really, really liked, where they show the kids sitting on the couch watching TV, but they're wearing masks backwards on their head, so the masks are staring back at us while they're watching TV, and the camera just slowly creeps towards them. I just thought it was a really nice shot, and there's a few shots like that in the film that look like they were put together really, really well. But ultimately, this story did very little for me. I had very little sympathy for the parents. I had very little care about the kids or what happened to them. And just, I don't know. I felt like there's no arc in this story whatsoever. I guess the mom does have an arc, but the kids kind of don't. They're odd at the beginning and they're odd at the end. And that's about it, and a bunch of stuff happens in between that makes them seem even odder. So overall, a well-made film that, should get these filmmakers some attention. But as far as the story goes, again, I found it lackluster, and, it's going to be hard for me to recommend this to horror fans. So that's all for me for general thoughts.
Okay, I'll kick it over to Don. How are your general thoughts on Tin and Tina?
Not far off from Venom. I'm kind of right there in the same boat. I think that my biggest issue with this one, and there are several, is that it's really a stretch to call this horror. I mean, the kids are kind of malevolent, but they're not vicious. I mean, they're just they spend the majority of the film just talking about, the Bible this, the Bible that, yada yada yada. And I mean, for one, that automatically lowers my interest because I don't believe in this stuff. So yeah, the majority of that kind of just takes me out of that just immediately. But it doesn't really introduce any kind of level and presence into what's going on. I mean, they're not killing people for the sake of religion. They're not doing, kidnapping animals and torturing them or sacrificing them because they think they're doing the right thing and saving them. But because of what they're doing, it makes them seem vicious and evil. It just really, like Venom said, it goes more for tension rather than outright horror. And I thought it was treaded better in There's Something Wrong with the Children that we did earlier this year. But even that was kind of, a lackluster film, but even that was better than this. But yeah, I think the big issue with this one, more so than just, the lack of horror, is just it's 2 hours and it feels it. I mean, this is slow burn central. There's no reason for this kind of material to be 2 hours. I mean, There's Something Wrong with the Children did this kind of similar story in what was that, like 95 minutes or somewhere around there. Yeah. I mean, it was like, hour and a half barely, just like barely over if it was, but yeah, that one was a lot better in treating this kind of material because the pacing to that one was just way, way more engaging. And yeah, I really felt Venom's the critique of him in this one. It was like the reason this lasts as long is the stupidity of the parents, and I that father just the dad just utterly pissed me off. I mean, yeah, I mean he explained it better. Just the disbelieving, skeptical spouse. Just ugh. I mean, I was hoping for him to be set on fire and follow the other guy, but yeah, I think there's way more. There's way more flaws in this one than there should be. I mean, the material is fine. The idea of the kids being off simply because of their religion and the fervent the ferventness that they use to exact its teachings would have been a fine way to go about it. But I mean, unless they're like possessed by some kind of a demon or entity or something, I mean, it really isn't that interesting. It's just way too long. And then you topple all of that off by being as long as it is simply because the skeptical nature of the adults and their stupidity just it kind of undoes all the good stuff. Because I mean the first half to this isn't bad. The whole setup in how the family comes together, how we get to see the kids interacting with them the first few times where we don't really know what their intentions are, and all of their actions just it seems like they're well intentioned, but you don't really know the true evilness behind it. I think there's a lot there that works, and it kind of does bring you into it kind of well. But then it just drags on and drags on and drags on, and only drags on because of how stupid and idiotic everybody is. Yeah, it's really hard to care about this thing once you get to the hour and a half mark. I mean, you're just hoping and praying that this ends and somebody wisens up and realizes what's happening, but it just drags on for another half hour. So yeah, I mean, it looks good, no technical matters are solid, I guess, if that matters to you. But yeah, I mean, the phrase "it feels 2 hours" is definitely there for this one, and you're gonna probably be, pissed off at what goes on and how idiotic the people are more so than you're going to be terrified. So not one for me. I can see it being more so for others that look past those issues, but I think it's going to be kind of hard to because it's just so prominent in your face about it. So Yeah, this one was kind of a miss for me. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much all on my end because I'm trying to look over what I have, and I don't have anything else that's new. I mean, other than what he said. So yeah, that's all on my end.
All right. So speaking of movie or people this movie is for, I thought it was going to be me after the first act, but then nothing much happens. I think that's my issue. Much like you guys said, it really feels as long as the running time says, if not longer. I also agree with the trope of the spouse that just doesn't believe, doesn't listen. And not only that, but they even add in the extra wrinkle of like, oh, the spouse that was skeptical of bringing the kids home in the first place does like a 180. And as soon as the wife shows any concern, now it's like, now he's mad and he's like, no, you have to, you like, it's all in your head. When, wait a minute, I thought you were the one that was skeptical of the situation in the first place. So shouldn't you be like maybe more sympathetic or trying to figure out, what exactly is going on? But no, it was just too quick of a swap for me to find believable. And I mean, the only other thing I can really add, I mean, I did like the kind of religious angle at the beginning, or like to begin with, as to like set the table for the story, but it just, I felt like it didn't go many places. It just kind of was uneventful. And then the ending, like if you're gonna do a slow burn that's slow developing where you don't get much during the story, you bet on the ending. And I don't know, it just felt like a nothing burger ending to me. Not much to be interested in, not much of like any type of twist or reveal or just like satisfying ending. It actually kind of ended a little predictable for how I thought the story was going. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to sit through for 2 hours. There's just not the justification for it to be that long. I can think of like plenty of stuff that could have been cut that did little to nothing to progress the story forward, or that was like needed to get to the ending. It's not like a slow burn type where like there's all these things you have to pay attention to in order to like get the ending or feel satisfied with the ending. There just wasn't a whole lot going on. I mean, if anything, the kids themselves or the actors that played them, I think they did a fine job. I think they definitely did come off creepy. If you've seen like Village of the Dam or Children of the Dam, they kind of go for that look. So they did succeed in making the children creepy, but that's not exactly hard to do. I mean, most children horror movies, the children are creepy. That's not the most difficult thing to make happen. But the problem is in this movie, it's not enough to carry a 2-hour running time, because eventually you just stop being creeped out by them and you're just kind of like, okay, like what is this going to amount to? And not much that you're not expecting, I would say, at least. There is a scene with an animal that's kind of like tough when you see something on screen, but even that is just like, it's set up in such a way that you know exactly what you're about to see. What else? Yeah, I mean, not much actually else to say. It was just kind of a dull story to me, despite liking the setup in the first act for the most part. I thought, at about the half hour, 45-minute mark, I was like, okay, we got something to work with here, and it just never really panned out for me. So I'm kind of right along with you guys. It's disappointing too, because I was hoping for more with this, but unfortunately, yeah, not too much good things to report about it. So that's it for general thoughts from me. So Venom, back to you.
I mean, I was reading some reviews after I watched the movie, and a lot of people were talking about how this could be an unreliable narrator situation where we're watching the movie through the eyes of Lola, the mom. And since she sees these kids as kind of creepy and potentially dangerous to her unborn child, that's how they're portrayed on screen. So I don't know. It's really hard, because if you're gonna if the filmmakers are trying to convince me that everything that happened in the first hour and a half of the film was real and actually happened, I don't see how there's any fucking confusion whatsoever about, what's up with these kids and, where they're trying to get to. I mean, I will say, Mike said the ending was kind of predictable. I'm going to say the opposite. I predicted a completely different ending, a much more generic, adopted crazy kids type ending. Maybe something a little bit more along the lines of like Orphan, like one of the Orphan movies or something. Like that's kind of what I was expecting, and instead they give us just an ending that's I don't know if that's supposed to be a feel good ending or if once again it's just unreliable narrator, or if these kids really are evil and this was their plan the whole time. I'm not going to talk about the ending yet, but so it's up to interpretation of the viewer. And my interpretation is I don't even want to really think about it. Like, I didn't like the movie enough to want to use the brain power to think, to interpret this ending, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Again, even though we're all three of us saying some negative stuff about the movie, it's not a terrible movie. It's just, it's a little too long for this story. This story does not need 2 hours. I understand that they're trying to drag out the tension and, drag out the, ooh, what's going to happen, type vibe of the whole thing. But it's like, but then you get an ending that's not a payoff. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love my slow burns, but I need a payoff. There's a reason. There's got to be a reason why I watch this slow ass movie, I always use Saint Maud as the same example, much to Don's chagrin, because I know how he feels about it. But if you guys remember, Mike and I both adore Saint Maud. And Saint Maud, at least Saint Maud is only 85 minutes. And it gets to the story, it tells the story it needs to tell, and then it gets to that spectacular fucking ending that, leaves very little to interpretation. And it ended up being our number one film of 2021, as it came out in the States in 2021. Most of the rest of the world in 2020. But yeah, this movie is not Saint Maud. It's not like we watch an hour and a half of slow burn and then get this octane fueled ending. No, my friends, it's the complete opposite. And just when you think the shit is it's finally about to hit the fan and there's shit going on in the house and, somebody has been hurt badly, it just fizzles out. It just fucking fizzles out, and mom just wakes up the next morning in a hospital, and we get the ending that we get, and it's like, yeah, that does not satisfy the 2 hours that I wasted watching this movie. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say wasted. It wasn't a complete waste. It's just, like I said, I hate watching movies that are this long, and then when you get to the end of it, it's like, why did I watch this? Obviously, as a podcaster, we know why we watched it, but I felt the same way with Beau is Afraid. At the end of that 3+ hour Ari Aster fucking pipe dream, I'm sitting in my theater seat like, why the fuck did I sit here for this long for that? And you guys know I love Ari Aster's first 2 movies. I mean, they're literal fucking masterpieces. But Beau is, yeah, I don't know. People who saw the movie know what the fuck I'm talking about, and people who haven't seen the movie, I would say don't. But again, Ari Aster has his fans, so he's gonna get eyes on his movies. Anyway, back to Tin and Tina. You're gonna give me a slow burn with a slow ending with no real satisfaction. It just irks the shit out of me. So yeah, I'm gonna end up walking away from the film thinking negatively of it, which is too bad because again, it's not a bad film. It's just a little too slow for this material. It's a little too long. And I don't know. I'd like to speak to the person who's actually satisfied with this ending. Like I don't see how this ending would satisfy horror fans. I don't see how it would satisfy thriller fans. I don't see how it would satisfy drama fans. But if it does, someone please hit me up and tell me you love that ending and why, because I can't understand the choices that they made. And then with the ending that we got, it's almost like the filmmakers are trying to make us, the viewer, think that we're wrong. That, oh, no, the kids are innocent. Oh, they're, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, Really? I mean, I watched the movie with my two fucking eyes. I know what you presented to me. If you're telling me that everything in this movie is a misunderstanding, I'm going to look you in the face and tell you your movie's fucking stupid. I'm sorry. I hate to do that because I am no filmmaker. I have never made a film. I have no idea how hard it is. And I don't like shitting on people's art no matter how bad it is. And this, again, this movie isn't bad, but I would still question the decision of this ending. That's all. It's going to be something I'm going to be thinking about for a couple of days. And then after I'm done thinking about it, I will never think of this movie again because it's just not memorable. It's not anything that you're going to remember. It's not anything that's going to stand the test of time. It's just going to be another Spanish, family horror film that maybe, just didn't hit the marks that a lot of horror fans are looking for. And the movie's called a horror mystery. So, I mean, fucking horror is the first word in there. And like Don said, where, other than the implied horror, where was the actual horror? There's very, very little in the film. So, yeah. I don't have anything else to say. If you guys have anything else before we jump into this spoiler section.
I was just going to add that, yeah, I mean, I agree with the general sentiment. It's not like a terrible movie. I just think it's the kind of the, when I call it dull, I think the dullness enhanced because of the 2-hour running time where it doesn't feel like we need a lot of this. To me, there's just a lot of downtime in the movie where not much is happening in between a few things that I can point to that were like genuinely creepy. To me, there's not much progression in the characters because we get the husband kind of does the 180 flip relatively early on in the film, and from that point on, the characters mainly stay in the same state of being throughout the rest of the movie. So there's just not a lot to go on. There's not a lot to keep me really engaged. And then just I guess the ending, I don't know, maybe I didn't explain right. It's maybe predictable is the wrong word. I just thought it was like kind of lackluster the way it ended. Just, I mean, I figured something similar might happen, and it was just, I don't know. Everything felt, a lot of the things that happened felt like the standard kind of things that would happen in a creepy kids get adopted movie. So it didn't really feel like it did much outside the box of what you would expect in this subgenre.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll leave it at that for general thoughts. Yeah.
All right, then let's go ahead and jump into our walkthrough. So this is your final spoiler warning, folks. If you have not seen Tin and Tina, I'm not going to tell you to go see it and come back, but I'll say listen to the first bit of our walkthrough, and you decide if it's something that you want to invest 2 hours with. Who knows? Hopefully, I do it justice. So. All right, here we go. So our movie opens at a wedding. We see Lola and Adolfo getting married. Lola is a little pregnant. You see a little baby bump there on the belly. Nothing major. It's not like she's 9 months pregnant by any stretch, but just a small little baby bump. They go through the wedding, he kisses the bride, the service is over. They go outside of the church where everyone, throws rice, or at least they used to. The movie, by the way, is set in Spain, 1981. So no cell phones, no internet. So it's going to be a fairly basic story. And basically what happens is after Lola and Adolfo walk out of the church, all of their guests are there throwing rice at them, but then suddenly they all stop and they have a look of shock on their face. Adolfo doesn't know what's going on, but then he turns to look at Lola, and Lola has a blood stain, at her lower midsection, her crotch area, if you will. And after that, we go to the hospital and we find out that Lola had a miscarriage and that there was complications with the miscarriage and that she will never have children again. She's told this by a female doctor in the hospital. Of course, Lola goes into a depression, basically doesn't leave the house, starts to look as white as a ghost, big bags under her eyes, just in general looking terrible. Unfortunately, Adolfo can't really be with her all the time to comfort her because it turns out he's an airline pilot. So he's flying around all over the country. Apparently, he flies a route between Spain and China, because the China is mentioned multiple times in the film. So they decide to adopt, and they decide to go to a monastery that doubles as an orphanage that's very close to them, just a few miles away. They end up going there with the intention of adopting 2 children because, as it turned out, Lola was pregnant with twins. They had already started the nursery in their house, and you see 2 cribs there, so they already had plans for 2 babies. So they decide, let's go adopt a couple of babies. They go to the orphanage to look at some of the kids that they have. They get the tour from, the Mother Superior there at the orphanage / nunnery. And then Mom kind of wanders off. Mom's not back to normal at this point. She's still incredibly depressed, incredibly down. But then she hears this music, this pipe organ music coming from the cathedral. She goes ahead and walks into the cathedral and just listens to the music, just kind of sits there staring at the altar, listening to the music. Eventually, the Mother Superior comes in, lets her know, oh, it's heavenly music, don't you think? And I can't believe that the people playing it are 7 and 9 years old. And she's like, wait a minute, kids are playing this? And then that's when we are introduced to Teen and Tina, 2 very pale, almost albino. They're not quite albino. They got that Swedish look where they have that very blonde hair and very pale skin, but they don't have the bloodshot eyes, so they're not true albinos necessarily. They don't look Spanish. I mean, that hit me right away. I'm looking at these 2 kids like, these are Spanish kids? I mean, we don't get much about their background, just that they were dropped off at this orphanage when they were I think they said when they were 4 years old. So I guess they are Spanish. It's just the kind of Spanish I've never fucking seen, but that's cool. So anyway, Mom, Lola, comes up with the idea of adopting these 2 instead of babies. She convinces the dad that, these 2 are older and they're probably not going to get as much attention as the younger kids at the orphanage. Dad is instantly skeptical. He just looks at the kids and can tell that there's something wrong with him. He calls them strange. And at this point, I'm right on board with Dad. It's like, Dad kind of can see what's going on here, that these 2 kids, I mean, just their smile when they're first introduced to Lola and Adolfo, and their smile is just, ugh. It's like, no, stop it. Don't smile anymore. Never, ever smile again. Just, you're one of those. And combined with the very pale skin and the very light colored hair, admittedly, it's very creepy. So I'll give him credit for that. So they end up taking Adolfo and, Lola and Adolfo end up taking Teen and Tina. And yes, that is a real name, by the way. Teen is a real name. I have an uncle named Teen. Tío Teen in Spanish is what I used to call him. So, yeah, it's a real name. I know it's a weird one. And in the movie, they actually say that they're not Spanish names. Tina may not be, but like I said, Teen absolutely is. I know multiple guys named Teen, but, that's a story for another show. So, Lola and Adolfo bring Teen and Tina home. Instantly, the dog doesn't like them. The dog that they've had for however long, we never get an actual amount of time, but the dog that, Lola's had for a while instantly doesn't like the kids, is barking. And I'm screaming at the TV, well, that's it. If my dog doesn't trust him, I trust my dog way more than I trust a fucking human being. But nope, they ignore the dog. They just tie the dog up in the yard. And then just end up, going in the house. They get the tour of the house, blah, blah, blah. The kids are seen, sitting down for dinner. The parents, who are not religious, start eating right away. The kids are kind of just frozen there. And then they say, we haven't said grace. Is someone going to say grace? Dad, of course, relents and says, okay, let's say grace. He says grace, and then they start to eat. They have seemingly a fairly normal night until later that evening, with the dog in the house. They're basically, I forget exactly what the kids did, but they were reprimanding the kids for something. I think it was just for like jumping on their bed or something stupid. They're reprimanding the kids, and the dog is basically has to be held back by Lola. The dog is barking and growling and just trying to get out of Lola's hand, almost like he wants to attack these 2 kids. And after a while, the dog finally gets sick of his collar being tugged on, and he actually bites Lola's hand, and pretty badly too. I mean, he draws blood. There's a good amount of blood there from a dog bite. I've been bitten by a dog. I've never seen that much blood before, so that had to be a pretty good dog bite. And then we kind of get the what I call the Child's Play remake scenario, where these kids, just like Buddy in the Child's Play remake, he wants to do the right thing for his owner. He wants to protect his owner, and he wants to do the right thing. So these kids, in their infinite wisdom, decide that they are going to, quote unquote, bless the dog. They're going to bless his soul so that he's no longer angry and that he no longer attacks Lola, who is basically, you know, the focus of these kids' affection right now. Much more than dad. It seems like mom is kind of who they're kind of gravitating towards more and more. What ends up happening is these fucking kids, and thankfully, I will give the filmmakers credit. Thankfully, they don't force me to watch a dog get butchered, because I'd turn this fucking movie off instantly if it was just gratuitous violence against an animal. But instead, what we see is the kids and the dog are hidden behind the couch, and all we see is the same couch from that shot I mentioned earlier, you know, with the kids wearing their masks backwards. But this time, instead of the kids sitting on the couch and the TV on, the TV's off, the lights are off, and you see the kids pull out a bunch of knives from the kitchen, like literally a collection of knives. And they actually take time deciding which one is the best knife. They end up going with the butcher knife, you know, Michael Myers' favorite. And then you just hear the sound effects, the stabbing sound effects, and the slicing sound effects, and the disemboweling sound effects, because they're very obviously pulling something out. What I think they did is I think they pulled out the dog's heart and then tried to bless it, because you hear the kids say a prayer after all the cutting and slicing sound effects stop. We hear the kids say a prayer. Then they put the dog back together. Mind you, again, we're not seeing any of this. We're only hearing it, thankfully. They put the dog back together, they sew it up, and then they're surprised when the dog doesn't wake up and is suddenly good. The next morning, the kids, still covered in the dog's blood, go to their parents' bedroom to wake them up, to Lola and Adolfo's bedroom, I should say. And Lola thinks that they were just playing with some strawberry jam, because we had like a little bit of a food fight scene earlier. And Dad instantly is like, nah, that's not jam. They go downstairs, and then we see the aftermath. And yeah, you can see that the kids split the dog open up the middle, you know, up through his torso, and then sewed him back up. So you don't see any like actual doggy body parts lying around. They actually did a pretty good job getting out everything back in the dog and sewing him up. But they literally act genuinely surprised that they killed the dog. Like, as soon as the dad says, yeah, I think you killed the dog, they reacted like they started to cry. And I'm like, wait, what? Like what part of the Bible tells you that you can pull out organs from a creature and bless it and then put it back in the body? That's in no part of the Bible I know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the thinking behind that. I was a little confused.
Yeah. Obviously, the kids are confused. You know, they were hoping to make the dog less aggressive, and so that it wouldn't attack mom or them. You know, this is up to interpretation. If you think the kids are evil, they're probably evil. If you think the kids are just stupid and overly indoctrinated in religion, then that could be the case too. But I found it funny because
I was trying to figure out at this point if they're still trying to play that, like if we're supposed to be halfway thinking, okay, they're legit evil versus they're just idiotic because of the way they were taught, you know? Because I was like, what lesson did they learn that they would think that was a valid way to cleanse? Because you would think, oh, I'm cleansing someone, it'd be like some type of prayer or something, not like doing what they did.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, that was a weird one. So anyway, what's funny is that as I'm watching that scene, I'm thinking this would never fly in an American household. if you killed an American couple's dog who's been with them forever, those kids are back at the orphanage the same fucking day. But for some reason in Spain, 1981, and mom did have a visceral reaction to the dog. I mean, she falls to her knees. She hugs the dog. She's crying, screaming. It's like, I don't understand how they decide to keep the kids afterwards. And of course, it's the husband. The husband is like, he's trying to defend them. Just like Mike said, he was the one who was skeptical at first, but now he flips on a dime and he's like, I'm sure it was a misunderstanding, something they read in the Bible that they, just did incorrectly, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what a piece of shit this guy is. Like, already 40 minutes into a 2-hour movie, I already fucking hate him. And so that's that. They decide to keep the kids and no big deal. Later on in the film, Lola discovers that she is pregnant. And why is she pregnant? Or at least why are the filmmakers implying that she's pregnant? Because Tin and Tina supposedly can talk to God. That's what they claim. Or Jesus. Maybe they say Jesus in the movie. But they claim to be able to speak to somebody, something ethereal. And the way that they do it is they fucking suffocate themselves to the brink of death. Literally, Lola will take a pillowcase or a plastic bag, put it over, Tina will take a plastic bag and put it over Teen's head and literally hold it over his head like she's trying to suffocate him until right before the brink of him passing out. And then she releases the bag and Teen claims he can see God or he can see Jesus and that they ask for favors. And the favor that they asked during this scene was, for Lola to get pregnant. He kind of points at her womb while he's supposedly looking at Jesus. These kids do such a good job of brainwashing these parents that Lola actually tries it later in the film. We'll get to that. But yeah, I found that almost funny. She ends up, so like I said, she is now pregnant. And then these kids start talking about crazy stories in the Bible. There's actually some really good foreshadowing in this movie. Early on in the film, during a dinner scene, the kids are seen giving the dad a gift of a crown of thorns, very much like Jesus's crown. They even say in the film that it's Jesus' crown. And I don't know how many religious people are listening right now, but what happened to Jesus right after he got the crown of thorns? He was fucking crucified. And I found like instantly I'm expecting, oh boy, is dad going to get crucified or something crazy like that? Because it just seemed like really, really heavy foreshadowing. But then when you actually see what happens, it's almost poignant, almost, mind you. All right, so like I said, Lola is pregnant. Adolfo still flying, gallivanting around the world, back and forth to China. In one scene, he brings back some of those spinning discs from China for the kids, and they incessantly listen to the song that kind of like the theme song for the spinning plates. And oh my God, it was so grating by like the third time I heard the song. I wanted to tear my ears off. But anyway, at one point, Lola does go back to the orphanage and asks the Mother Superior if the kids ever had any problems with violence with the other kids or anyone else. And the Mother Superior instantly is like, no, Tin and Tina are absolute angels. Like they've never done anything wrong. I mean, they're naughty, but no more naughty than any other kid that she's ever seen. She says all kids are naughty, when given the opportunity. But for the most part, they're good kids who care about, Jesus and the Bible and everything else. Lola kind of implies that there might be something wrong with them, and the Mother Superior actually gets defensive, and she quotes the Bible, talking about a good shepherd watching its flock and knowing that the sheep are good because you are a good shepherd, blah, blah, blah. Of course, covering her own ass, saying that, oh, the kids are fine. And then she literally tells Lola, the problem must be you. That's a crazy assumption to make, but again, it's a religious person, holier than thou, literally in this case. So yeah. And Lola obviously gets defensive, ends up leaving, very upset with this woman, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly it's Christmas. Like out of nowhere, the scene changes and it's suddenly Christmas. Like obviously time passes in this movie, but they don't give us any kind of, a month later or 2 months later or whatever. It's like, oh, suddenly it's Christmas and then you blink and it's New Year's. It's just really crazy. And it was on New Year's that Mom passes out, that Lola passes out, and that's when they find out that she's pregnant, blah, blah, blah. Now, when Tin and Tina were telling these Bible stories, throughout different scenes in the film, one of the things they talk about is how Mary gave birth to a child knowing that it was going to be killed for the sins of, the people. And it almost seems like the kids are implying that they're going to go after their brother and kill him for the sakes of everyone else in the world, which that's kind of what they're implying. At least that's what I got out of it. Because the kids are being really cryptic, really creepy when they're talking about their unborn brother. At one point, they even look at Mom and go, oh, wouldn't it be a shame if he died before he was even born? That would be terrible. Like, literally, they say that in the movie. So now, obviously, Mom is also scared for the kids. For her kid, not the kids, for her real child, in her womb. Adolfo then has to go on again. He has to go to work. He has to fly to China, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be gone overnight. And Lola goes to sleep, hoping that Adolfo would be home the next morning when she woke up. Instead, she wakes up and she's tied to the bed. Goodnight Mommy style, if you will. And at first, I thought that's where they were going, that they were going down the Goodnight Mommy route. And I actually rolled my eyes once thinking, no, don't do that. We already got Goodnight Mommy and a terrible remake. We don't need you doing it now. Thankfully, that's not the direction they went in. But it is still very fucked up because we see the kid putting we see Tina, the girl, grabbing a glass of milk, which Mom is seen throughout the film drinking milk. They bring Mom a glass of milk, and we see Tina put some kind of powder in it. Now, what's funny is that in an earlier scene, we see Tina accidentally put poison in a cup of coffee, or she was about to. She didn't actually do it. And Mom is like, no, that's not the sugar. That's poison. And then she gets the sugar container, and it looks fucking exactly the same. What manufacturer is this that's making poison and sugar and putting them in the same type of container? That's fucking nuts. But yeah, there it is. Obviously foreshadowing for later in the film. Keep that in your memory banks for a bit. Actually, you don't have to, because we're going to talk about it right now. Basically, with Mom tied up on the bed, the kids are seen putting some kind of powder from that container in the milk. Unfortunately, like I said, the containers look so similar, you're not 100% sure if they're putting sugar in it or poison. Who puts sugar in their milk, though? I mean, I guess it's a thing. I don't know. But yeah, and this is with Mom tied up in bed. They end up bringing her breakfast in bed with this tainted milk that they claim just has sugar in it. Mom obviously refuses to drink. Tina tries to get her to drink, puts the glass up to her lips, tips the glass. Mom is sealing her lips, absolutely positively is not going to drink whatever's in this glass. And then Tina's like, well, we have to get it to our brother somehow. And that's when the fucking kid, Tin, pulls out a syringe, and he sticks the syringe in the glass of milk, sucks it up, fills the syringe with milk, and literally is about to fucking stab her womb and put this milk in there. I'm pretty sure this isn't just sugar milk. I mean, again, what would give the idea to these kids that it's okay to puncture the womb with a syringe, that for the benefit of the child? Again, it seems pretty obvious these kids are fucked up. Mom ends up getting untied. She's only tied to the bed by garland, literally Christmas tree garland. And I'm thinking, that shit is not that thick. An average strength human should be able to just snap that, no problem. Finally, just as Teen is about to insert the syringe into her womb, she's able to get free and she gets out of the situation, blah, blah, blah. And, basically that moment, she goes into labor. Her water breaks just as Adolfo is coming back home. Basically, when Adolfo does finally come back home, everything I talked about has already happened, and Mom is in the kitchen with a knife defending herself against the kids. The kids aren't attacking or anything. It's just she's, preparing, basically. But then Adolfo walks in and, of course, accuses her of chasing the kids throughout the house with a knife. Fucking asshole. And instantly defends the kids, blah, blah, blah. So again, like I said, her water broke and she gave birth to the child. So, a few days go by, no major incidents with the kid happens until one day by the pool. Right after the baby was born, the kids, Tin and Tina, obviously wanted the baby to be baptized. They're very religious. They say, if he's not baptized, he'll, go to hell when he dies, or whatever the exact wording they gave is. He'll die in limbo, I think was the exact wording. And then Dad, I don't even know where Dad gets these giant fucking balls, but he's like, well, maybe we should baptize the kid. And Lola's like, no, we're not religious. Why would we baptize this child just to appease these two? And then Dad out of nowhere says, well, let's take a vote and the majority will win. And I'm thinking, you fucking piece of shit. You're just making the decision for her because the kids want the baby baptized. And then, of course, Dad votes for the baby to be baptized. And instantly Dad's like, well, that's it. It's settled. The baby's going to be baptized. I'm just like, I can't hate this guy any fucking more than I hate him at this goddamn point. And again, it's 1981 in Spain. Gender relations are what they were at that time. The men worked, the women stayed home with the babies, blah, blah, blah. Not nearly as much as the 50s and 60s, but obviously it still did occur a lot in the early 80s. So anyway, after a few days of the baby being home, Lola basically never ever leaves the baby's side. Basically is just always with it because she's terrified that, those two kids are going to try to do something. Well, one day the kids are out, they're at the pool, they're playing in the pool, swimming. Dad is in the yard watching Spain play Germany in the World Cup. Well, no, it's 1981, so it can't be the World Cup. So it's probably a qualifier of some kind. Anyway, they decide, let's go ahead and baptize the baby in our pool. Because apparently the concept of holy water has escaped these two kids that have that have read the Bible cover to cover multiple times. Yet they seem to think that chlorinated pool water is acceptable to baptize a child. They end up taking the baby while Mom is in the chicken coop gathering fucking eggs. The whole time I'm screaming at her like, you've been so worried about these two kids doing harm to your child, and now you're going to leave it alone. And I literally mean alone. She left the baby alone in the house because everybody else was outside to then go to the chicken coop and get eggs. And of course, the kids, while Mom is in the chicken coop, they grab the baby and they decide they're going to baptize the baby themselves. Yeah, I think you know where this is going. They grab the Bible, Yeah, that's true. They grabbed their Bible because they broke into a chest where Mom had locked their Bible away after Mom was sick of all their religious bullshit. And so they grab their Bible, they grab the baby, and they go to the pool, and they sit by the edge of the pool. Basically, Tin, a fucking 7-year-old boy, is holding the baby up by its legs above the pool and waiting for Tina to finish a prayer. She's reading a prayer from Genesis book 1 or something, right near the beginning of the Bible. And finally, when she's done reading her passage, she looks at her brother and gives a nod. The brother dips the baby in the water so that its head is completely underwater, but doesn't pull him out right away. Literally is just holding him there underwater. And he's like, should I pull him out now? And Tina's like, no, we want him to be really, really blessed. Just fuck. So finally, Mom comes out of the chicken coop, sees a baby's foot sticking out of the pool, and runs to the pool, grabs the baby from the kids. The baby's not fucking breathing. The baby is just laying there. Finally, she's patting it on the back, smacking it on the back, trying to, dislodge any water that might be in there. Finally, the baby does cough, and the baby's fine. He's alive. But of course, mom just goes ballistic on the kids. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Finally, the kids are like, oh, we wanted to do it for our brother and, to save his soul. Mom slaps Tina in the face to shut her up. Then Tin chimes in to try to say something, and she slaps Tin in the face. And literally, this is when Dad finally turns around. Mind you, Dad is like 10 feet away. It's not like he's like in another part of the house. He's literally 10 feet away from the pool while all this is happening. But he's so enthralled with Germany kicking Spain's ass that, he's not thinking about the kids at the pool. So Mom instantly goes off on Dad, too. What the fuck is wrong with you? How is this going to happen? Literally a few feet away from you. Dad is obviously embarrassed. He ends up grabbing their Bible and setting it on fire. He pours lighter fluid on it and sets it on fire, which, of course, the kids go crazy. How can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And the very next scene, we see Lola and Adolfo returning the kids to the orphanage, monastery, whatever you want to go with. And basically, we see them driving away. We see Lola and Adolfo driving away from the orphanage. Tin and Tina are in the background with Mother Superior, and Lola's holding her baby. So it seems like everything, might be back to normal. Cool. That night, Adolfo is, doing his normal, getting drunk, watching TV in the living room. And then Lola kind of walks in, and she's not wearing her wedding band. She's holding it in her hand. She sits down next to Adolfo, and she doesn't look at Adolfo once. She just looks down at her hand as she's holding and fiddling with the ring, with her wedding band. Adolfo sees this instantly, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? You're not actually thinking about doing that. I mean, literally. And then he starts going with the everything I've done for you shit. I've given you a home. I've given you food and clothing. I've given you a son. And this is how you repay me. Of course, every male douchebag's defense. But then he gets on his knees. He seems, legitimate this time. He's apologizing. He's telling her, I'm so sorry. I will change. I will definitely change. This is right after they had a kind of nasty confrontation publicly in a restaurant where the baby was crying and Mom was eating her cake and didn't want to have to deal with the kid at that exact moment. Dad, Adolfo, is yelling at Lola, why don't you comfort the child? And then she does exactly what any mother should, looks right back at Adolfo and says, why don't you comfort your child? Why do I have to do it? And then instantly Adolfo's like, no, you're better at that than I am. You're the one who provides comfort. Dads don't do that, is kind of what he's fucking implying. Finally, she finishes her cake and then grabs the child and comforts him and, kind of settles him down because he was crying the whole time, making a scene in the restaurant, blah, blah, blah. Again, just more reason to hate Adolfo. So after he apologizes and he decides, I'm going to go to bed, I'm really tired, we see Lola take the ring and actually put it back on her finger, and she even cracks a little smile like, okay, I got my husband back, everything should be back to normal. But then suddenly Lola notices that the front door is open, like completely open, not even like latched, like just open. And she closes it and locks it. And basically, Adolfo goes upstairs to go to bed. She hears him kind of walk across the floor from downstairs, and then you don't hear his footsteps anymore. It's quiet for a few minutes, and then suddenly the TV goes out. And this is, like I said, this is 1981 in Spain, so they're dealing with an antenna on the roof. Apparently what happened is when the TV went out, Dad must have been watching TV upstairs or something because he knew it went out, because he decides to go outside onto the roof in the middle of a fucking storm, mind you, a torrential rainstorm, and tries to go up to the roof to fix the antenna. What ends up happening is Lola is calling out to Adolfo, and he's not answering. So instantly she's like, oh shit, there's something wrong. The reason he's not answering is because he's outside on the roof. And she goes upstairs to try to find, because she doesn't hear the baby crying anymore either. So then she goes upstairs and the baby's not in her crib. And instantly she's like the children. Like instantly she's, suspicious at the children. Because don't forget, I mentioned earlier that they live, what is it, like 6 kilometers away from the orphanage, which is only like a few miles, in American miles, like 4.5 miles, something like that. Something that, most kids could probably walk. They have boundless energy anyway. So, like I said, instantly Lola thinks, oh shit, the kids are back. So, she goes upstairs, she's looking around the house, she can't find Adolfo. Then, like I said, she looks in the crib and she can't find the baby, and she's flipping out. She's running around the house. Suddenly she goes outside to get Adolfo, and she goes outside and she looks up and he's on fucking fire. He's literally up on the roof with the antenna, and he's lit on fire, like literally just up, like Hereditary style. He ends up, rather than staying out in the rain like a halfway intelligent person and letting the rain put the fire out, he crawls into his house like a moron and literally sets his entire house on fire while he, of course, dies from his injuries. He finally falls. And then as soon as he falls, the living room is just engulfed in flame. At that moment, Lola again goes up, and she's actually calling out to the children now at this point. She's calling out to them, thinking that they're there in the house. She finally ends up going back to one of the other rooms in the house that she didn't look in the first time, and she finds the baby in his bassinet, but on the floor. Like not on the bed, but on the side of the bed, on the floor. Instantly, she thinks, oh, shit. And I think the viewers also at the same time think, oh, shit, the kids are fucking with her. They're going to pop out of somewhere somehow. But what ends up happening is no, she ends up getting the baby out of the house. It looks like she's got some major smoke inhalation because she's just breathing in smoke for that entire. And mind you, I forgot to mention, too, that mom has one fake leg. She has a prosthetic leg. I believe it's her right leg is a prosthetic. So mom obviously doesn't walk as well as, a person with 2 normal legs. And so she's, trying to get out of the house. She's kind of limping around. The house is filled with smoke, so she can't even really see. Finally, she gets outside and she passes out. She gets the baby out of the house. She gets herself out of the house. She gets out to the front yard, and then she passes out completely, just out cold. And we're thinking, as the viewer, oh, shit, here come the kids. Well, what ends up happening? The scene fades to black, and when the scene fades back up, we're in the hospital. It's the next morning, and we're in the hospital. We see Lola in the hospital bed, and we see one of the doctors come in, and she asks him, or no, not one of the doctors, the mother superior, actually, from the orphanage, comes to visit her and says, I spoke to the police and I found out what happened, and it's so tragic. Obviously, as horror movie viewers, we're all thinking, oh, the kids probably lied to the authorities, blah, blah, blah. But as it turns out, and again, take all of this with a grain of salt, as it turns out, when Dad was up on the roof trying to fix the antenna in a rainstorm, he was struck by lightning. We don't see this, obviously. We see the after effect when Dad is already on fire and crawling back into the house. So that's what they're claiming. They're claiming that Dad was struck by lightning. He crawls back into the house, sets the entire house on fire. The house burns down, but Lola and the baby are fine. The mother superior lets her know, no, the baby's fine. And then Lola starts going, wait, the children were innocent? And the mother superior is like, yes, as they've always been. They've always been just innocent children. And you kind of see Lola's face, starts out with confusion. But then as she keeps repeating, the children were innocent, the children were innocent, it's almost like her demeanor is slightly changing as she's laying there in the hospital bed. Then the scene fades out again. The scene fades up. And now we're at Adolfo's funeral. Adolfo's being buried. We see Lola in the background holding the baby carriage that has her baby in it, and she's standing there by herself. As the camera starts to pan towards her, we hear Teen's voice say mommy. And then he comes out and he's got a little tuxedo on, because he's at a funeral. He's got a little black suit on. And, and Lola seems happy to see him. Like, oh, they obviously came there together is basically what I'm saying. And then Tina comes into the frame. And then we see Tin and Tina standing in front of her mother and their brother, their adoptive brother. And mom, I forget exactly what her exact words were, but something along the lines of, thank God that we were all able to survive that fire, something along those lines. And then our movie just kind of fades out, and that's it. That's our fucking ending. After everything that mom went through, getting her dog killed, her getting tied up and almost poisoned, her almost dying in a fire that may have been started by lightning or may have been started by the kids. Again, it's up to your interpretation. But the point is, mom drank the Kool-Aid, and now mom is a religious person, because the movie ends with the priest presiding over the funeral, ending his prayer. We see Tin and Tina say amen, and then mom lifts up her head and says amen. And then we see Tina put the rosary back on her head that she had gifted to her mom earlier in the film, but mom, obviously isn't going to wear a rosary everywhere. So there you go, folks. It's like I said, the movie's up for interpretation. Did mom drink the Kool-Aid? Is she now a religious person who's going to actually take care of these children as her own? Were the kids evil the whole time, and this was their plan to get rid of dad so that mom would be theirs and theirs only? I've heard 2 or 3 other different interpretations of the ending as well. They're all just as valid, but none of them are satisfying, unfortunately, to me. After going through this solid 2-hour movie and then to get to the most lackluster ending potentially of 2023, it's a disappointment. I don't know. What do you guys think?
They almost partly kind of went for like the Rosemary's Baby ending of like, okay, she go ahead with the motherly duties even though she has questions about kids.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would have been okay with that kind of ending. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. If the kids would have turned out to be evil, like legitimately evil, and mom just accepted the fact that they're evil, but she wants to raise them because now she doesn't have a husband, I can accept that. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't really seem like what they're implying here. Like I said, I don't know what they're implying. It's up to the viewer's interpretation. I just tend to think that mom was so traumatized from everything that happened that when she heard the Mother Superior say that the kids were innocent, it kind of just rung in her head like, oh shit, I was wrong the entire time. And it's like, did you forget about your dog? Did you forget about your husband? Did you forget about the fact that they tied you to a bed and tried to poison your unborn child? Like, all of this just, like I said, the movie plays it off as biblical misinterpretations or misunderstandings, as Dad puts it. Yeah. I don't I don't know where in the Bible it says you can remove organs and then put them back in the body and the body's going to be fine. But whatever. That's what these kids interpreted as a way to save their dog's soul, as they put it. And yeah, Dad drank the Kool-Aid way, way early, but mom went overboard by the end, because like I said, even her wearing the rosary and saying amen at the end of the prayer, kind of a major character shift for her. What else we got?
That Boogeyman's probably our next episode.
Damn right! Finally, I'm ready for a jump-filled, terrible haunted house movie.
Yeah, I'm ready for just something loud and in my face, and at least I'll get that going to the theater, whether it's any good or not. I mean, I don't know how much you've even seen since you don't watch trailers, but it's like your kind of typical, like, tropey haunted movie, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Just, but I am glad to get back to the theater. It seems like this has been one of the bigger stretches between theatrical releases.
I still go to the theater. Obviously, I watch anything. I'll watch almost anything in the theater. Since I got that AMC A-list pass, and with my wife working nights and weekends, Yeah, I go see anything. So I still attend movies, but just not to watch any horror.
True. But I don't know, Dawn, you got anything before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to pop in like maybe a couple of times, but I think you guys pretty much covered what I was going to say without getting to me. So I think I'm pretty much good on this one.
All right then. Well, let's go around and find out what else is out for our team. So, Venom, what do you got?
All right, so No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 17 is available now, as I mentioned on the last episode, where we take a look at 2016's The Monster with our special guest, David Garrett. And unfortunately, the Crystal Lake Gift Shop, episode 4, had to be delayed. Obviously, with this past weekend being a holiday weekend and maybe some of us not anticipating how busy we were going to be, that ended up getting pushed back. So hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll still get episode 4 of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop out. On the main show, episode, 53 is our latest episode, and those are my picks, where we went ahead and took a look at, rather than taking a look at a couple of horror films, we look at a couple of docudramas about horror films, or at least horror film directors. So, of course, we look at the obvious choice of 2000's Shadow of the Vampire, but then I also threw in 1996's Gods and Monsters, starring Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser, in a story about the final days of the life of James Whale, the director of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. I ended up liking the movie a lot more than I thought I would, but so go ahead and check out that episode, along with all the other segments that we do on the show. And I think that's about it. I don't have any guest spots to speak of. I got a couple coming up, but I'll hold off until those become a reality. So that's it for me.
All right, Dawn, how about you?
Yeah, as mentioned, Creature Comforts is available. We should actually have a new one recorded sooner rather than later, which I'm kind of excited about. My usual spiel with the guest spots recorded that are unavailable yet, with Stu World Order, with Red 2, and Road to Nowhere with a triple bill of Fulci films. I did have a fun little guest spot with some friends of mine. I actually figured out what it was this time. It's called Paranormal: The New Normal. We did a massive shark movie bracket, which was a lot of fun because apparently nobody on that podcast actually saw the films. So me actually. Well, there's a thing that kind of we're trying to make it go viral, but I don't know what I don't know if it's going to get there. But there's a thing where we were discussing Shark Attack 3 Megalodon, and it was going up against some other movie, and I don't really remember what. And when they went to my turn, I tried to say that quote from Shark Attack 3, and it kind of ended up triggering people because they didn't know what I was talking about. And so I had to reassure them that it was a legitimate quote from the movie. If you've seen the film, you know what it is, and I'm not about to repeat it again for those that are unfamiliar with it. But if you haven't seen Shark Attack 3 Megalodon and you want to know what it is, watch it and you'll find out. It's pretty hard to miss. But yeah, the reactions I got when I said that were pretty obvious that I was the only one that actually took it seriously. So yeah, that one should be available. I don't know. I think the show's called Paranormal: The New Normal. So if you search for it and you find shark brackets, that should be me. Still waiting on a recording that I said I was supposed to have done almost a month ago. I'm waiting on the recording dates. I know what it is, but it's a recording on DVD Infatuation where I'm supposed to just look at 6 random films. We agreed to do the show a month ago, and I haven't had a chance to record it yet, so I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully we get that sooner rather than later. And lastly, the latest episode of the Horror Countdown. I actually don't remember what the latest episode is because we're recording this later than usual, so I don't remember what the latest one is. So give me 1 second here to look it up. And it seems that the episode is Top 10 Werewolves. So yeah, I think you'll probably be able to guess what my top 5 is. I think you'll probably be able to have a little bit of contention with the bottom 5. So that one was a fun time. That one is available now. So go ahead and give that a listen. But I think that's everything on my end, finally.
All right. Yeah, all I have to report is No More Room in Hell 53 is currently out. Gods and Monsters and Shadow of the Vampire, Venom's Picks. Great show, fun time. That's available. And then I did a guest spot on Slumber Party Massacre where we talked about movies that, I guess, franchise entries that jumped the shark. So, there were discussed like damn near 6-7 movies in total. And we had, it seemed like we had varying parameters for what constitutes jump the shark. But I believe that episode's not up yet, but it's coming. So check that show. Check the other episodes out. I guess in the meantime, it's a fun show. And that's it for me. So as far as Fresh Cuts goes, the next episode, I've kind of already mentioned it. It's going to be Boogeyman or The Boogeyman. Opens this week. Actually, we're recording Fresh Cuts a little later this week, so I think it actually opened tonight for the early screening folks out there. But I believe our next episode will record more early in the week next episode. So look for that. And other than that, I think that's it, guys. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's everything on my end. So.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this episode of Fresh Cuts. We will be back in less than a week's time, most likely, for our next episode. So until then, catch you later. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
Never adopt pale children. That just seems wrong.
Yeah, has there ever been pale children that weren't scary or worse in a horror movie? I think not.